Hey friends, welcome back to the Bite Size Podcast. I'm your host, Lorraine Michaels, and today I am so excited to have Brittney Tollinchi on the Bite Size Podcast. I met Brittney through Six Figure School. If you haven't guessed it, I have amazing friends in this group. If you don't
Mhm.
know, haven't heard, Lindsay Schwartz, Powerhouse Women, she has a group, Six Figure School, of amazing women entrepreneurs, moms, all the things. And so I was very blessed to get connected with this powerhouse woman. She is a coach, she's a mom, she's a wife, she's a speaker, she's an author. I mean, she's a jack of all trades and master of all, I might add. So I'm so
None,
excited for
Lorraine,
you.
none.
So excited for you to get to meet and hear from Miss Brittney. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, Lorraine, you are the best. Thank you so much for hosting. I am just happy to be here. I cannot wait for the conversation that's going to unfold.
Absolutely. I know everybody is going to love this. So I want to do something a little bit different. Sometimes when I bring on a guest and introduce them, I'm always like, where did you start and how did this come about? I just want to dive in because you are so incredible and you have so much to bring
Mhm.
to the world, to the audience, to life. I am so excited for what is coming soon. This book launch that we have been talking about, and you have an incredible piece that you talk about quitting. And if y'all have been listening to my podcast lately, I have removed a lot of things in my life, including all my hair. and it felt like I was quitting on my business, on life. And so I want to give people the freedom of hearing from you and your thoughts on quitting. And what exactly do you talk about in this book?
Oh my goodness. I love this. I love this just because I know how instrumental a reframe on quitting was in my own life. So, a little bit about my story. This was actually about 2 years ago. I was taking a work trip from Denver to Kansas City. At the time, I had been married, I had just welcomed another baby and all of the things. I'm on this drive to Kansas City. It's over 600 miles, and I bawled the entire way. And I think what had happened is it was this emotional release of
Mm,
this autopilot living that I didn't even realize I was doing.
mm,
This like, okay, wait a second. I've got the education check. I've got the marriage check. I've got the family check. I've got this awesome job that I love check. And it was this, but what is this all for? Like, what is this all
mm,
for? And I think as the stereotypical high achievers, we're always like, what's next? Give me the
mm,
next checkbox. Give me the next checkbox. Give me the next checkbox. And we forget the power of being able to quit the things that are no longer serving us because
mm,
we just keep trying to persevere. And that's what
mhm,
I was doing. I was trying to persevere through this constant, like, how do I get to the next level? How do I get to the next level? How do I get to the next level? And in that moment, I knew something was stirring, that I was going to have to make a big change. Again, I said I had a corporate job that I absolutely loved with an organization, with the team, doing what I loved. And I was
mm,
being called to step out of the corporate box. And it took me about a year and a half, lots of praying. That's a whole journey that I unpack frequently on my podcast. But what I found myself is I found myself at the crossroads where I knew I had to actually quit the job.
mm,
And what I realized in that process was I was quitting comfort. I was quitting a perceived stability. I was quitting an
structure.
identity and like a worldly
Yep.
job title instead of a deeper purpose and identity in who I really truly was and what I was being
Mm,
called to do. And so I unpack that in this chapter of the book that was released in mid-November. So it's Joyful Entrepreneur, their volume 3 in Times Square. We're releasing it the
That is
22nd of November. So that's pretty exciting. But
that
really,
is
it's
so
just about busting that myth that quitting isn't failure. Quitting is freedom. So I have to ask you, so this stuff that you've quit recently, like you quit some social media stuff, what are you finding on the other side of that quit?
Exactly that. Freedom. Freedom. When uh when I deleted everything, and like before you do something kind of major, usually your iPhone or even on the computers, it's like it'll flag you like, "Hey, you're about to delete this. Are you sure?" And in the moment, I was just like, "Yes, yes, yes, like delete it." And I let it all go. And then afterwards, I was like, "What did I do?"
Oh no.
But then, like, after I sat with it, I was like, "It's gone." Like, I don't
Um,
have to show up. I don't have to reply. I don't have to look. I don't have to do anything. And I was just like, "I'm here." Like, I don't have to record this because it's pretty and it's gonna be a B-roll or this can be content later. Like, I don't have to do any of that. Like, all I have to
yeah.
do is be present and be open and receptive. So like that
Mhm.
quitting and that deleting and that releasing, I mean, it was that like I got to release everything, and it just there was so much weight lifted off of me, and literally like it felt like the veil was lifted. Like I could see
Oof.
clearly, I could hear clearly. My quiet time is so much more just I don't wanna say soulful, but my
Rich.
quiet time is quiet time, right? I don't have the noise of alerts. I don't have the noise in my head of, "Hey, you better check this," or, "Oh, what time is it? You better post it because of the algorithm." Like, I don't have any of that anymore. Alls I have is me and my thoughts and my time with God, and like and I get to show up authentically when I want on my podcast or YouTube or on with other people and their podcasts. So present. It's so
Yeah. And
powerful.
being and what it's unlocking for you, just being able to be present. Like instead of constantly chasing this, like chasing an opportunity, the
Mm,
way that I'm sure you've started to see that opportunities seem to be actually flowing to you instead
mhm.
of this constant like chase, 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 chase. Um,
Yeah.
and that's, yeah, that absolutely happened for me too. I was sitting there and so I knew that I needed to close one chapter so that whatever was meant for me would find me. And it was within 30 days of leaving this corporate job that I had a book deal. One I had never asked for, one I had never pursued, all of the things, right? It was divinely orchestrated for me because I made space for it. And I
Yes.
believe that wholeheartedly.
Yes, yes. I can't remember where I was reading that, but that is like literally the thing that so back in gosh, I think it was July. Back in July, had heard this prompting of surrender, letting it go,
Mhm.
like, and maybe I wasn't really open or receptive to like actually hearing, "Hey, you need to delete and get off all social media." I was just hearing, um, letting go of like the subscription stuff and letting go basically of the control. I was trying to control the situation, make the connections, make those
Yeah.
opportunities rather than letting them flow to me. And I mean, so I heard that back in July and I was like, okay, I'll sort of surrender." Like sometimes when you surrender, it's like you think of opening up your hands, but my surrender was
Yeah.
kind of like this, like one hand closed, one hand open, like, "Okay, God, here you go. I'm going to hang on to this though because I got this." And
Yes.
fast forward to October 28th when I was like, "I'm done. I can't take it anymore. Here." And then I just threw it all back to God. And I'm like, "It's yours. I don't want it. You do with it."
Take it back.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it's like that song where it's like, "I'll do anything for love, like, I'll do anything to step into your alignment, God, but I won't do that."
Yeah, exactly. So it's like that opened up a whole new can of worms and a whole new
Yeah,
chapter of journal entries for me with, surrender. And what is that? what does that really look like? What is that posture? Like we were talking about the posture of surrender and how it looked like for you. Um,
Yeah.
it did not look like that for me at first. And I really wanted to, like in my heart, I wanted to surrender it. And in my heart, like I knew God was saying, you don't have to do this. Like you don't have to work so hard for this. If you just be obedient, I will lead you. Like I will literally show you where to go. But you have to surrender and you have to be obedient. And I was
Yeah.
halfway doing it, you know? And
Yep.
it
Yep.
just sucked. It was so rough. So,
I
like,
mean, I was in the same boat where I was like halfway surrendering, which is why it took me a year and a half from that drive to Kansas City to actually
yeah,
putting in my resignation, a year and a half because I was so busy trying to like, okay, that's cute, God, but what if we try this instead? And
yeah,
you know what? Like, hey, instead, I'll just put better boundaries at work so that maybe I can open up myself, to do this like side hobby. Or okay, God, I'll use my voice more loudly in these boardrooms. But like, I don't think, do we really need to quit? That sounds drastic. Like, if there was a dialogue going on, that is exactly what it would have
yeah,
sounded like. Because
yeah.
surrendering is, and yeah, that posture of surrender that we talked about, it's, I don't think that surrendering is actually meant to be easy. I think that
Mm,
that's part uh, of coming to and being able to make that choice and the growth that happens when you make that choice. And
yeah,
I was at a speaker retreat where we were asked to take the posture of surrender. And so in that moment, and everyone's eyes are closed, so it's supposed to be this really private, like intimate moment for yourself. In that moment, I find myself literally drop to my knees. We're standing on Virginia Beach, where I drop to my knees in Virginia Beach. I toss my forehead in the sand, because
mm,
that was the posture of surrender that I had felt my journey over the last 6-7 months had taken me to. And
mm,
it wasn't until after the exercise was complete that the host brought us all together. She's like, okay, everybody close your eyes and take the posture of surrender that you took, and now everybody open your eyes. And I was the only person who was head in the literal head in the sand. And it was in that moment that I had one of my breakthroughs where surrender, I know in especially this journey since leaving, surrender has felt uh, weak. Surrender
mm,
has felt powerless because there is a little out of control.
mhm.
Surrender has felt a little helpless, maybe even like, hey, I'm all right, fine. Like, I'll just, I'm here for the show, I guess.
Yeah,
And it was in that moment that I realized that sometimes our surrender does ask us to take the posture of knees down, literal head in the sand. But
yeah,
for the other folks that were there, they were very much so standing in their surrender. And that's
mm,
when I realized that that's what God was also calling me to do. That I had gotten to my point of kneeling in surrender, and that's exactly where he needed me, but he was now calling me into standing in
mm.
surrender and taking that posture. And that was just such a beautiful breakthrough moment.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I totally resonate with that because that's exactly like
Yeah.
what it's a perfect depiction of. I mean, that's the steps that I've been taking because it was
Yeah.
I was halfway surrendering and then I did and I literally like on my face like I don't know what to do anymore, like take this, you know? Um and now it's this okay. Okay, I will be the passenger, you know? I will allow you to guide me. What does this look like? Where do you want me, God? How does this look now? But it's just so I want to go back to you said from that moment, that drive that you had that breakthrough till you actually quit was over a year.
It was a year and a half. Yes, ma'am, it
Wow.
was because, right? Like, again, I'm going to say stereotypical high achiever,
Yeah.
stubborn. I'm going to do it my way. Okay, what if we just add this to the list instead?
Yeah.
Hey, is this real? Like, right? Because I'm one of those, like, nobody's going to outwork me.
Yeah.
I'm like, no one's going to be more determined. Like, you understand that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it was the same thing. It was like, no, I'll just work my way out of feeling like I'm supposed to be doing more with my life. I'll just
Yeah.
work my way out of the checkbox autopilot living. And I'll just be really intentional about making sure that I've got work life balance. I'll just be really intentional about AKA doing it my way. That's
Yeah.
what I was
Yeah.
doing. I spent a year and a half doing it my way, stepping into more. And and part of that, like, there was no part of that year and a half was lost. Like, that year and a half absolutely was part of the journey to get
Mhm.
me to the point where I could resign.
Yeah.
Because it was, what happened over that year and a half was true transformation in the form of, because I started creating better work life balance, I I actually won top performer of the year twice in a row in a $5.6 billion international organization. So,
Wow.
like, crazy things like that happen,
Yeah.
while also being so present with my
Yeah.
family and moving into a new home, and watching my family thrive, and these beautiful things. And I started noticing it was, for instance, like, I would take 15 minutes in the morning to just pray and journal instead of logging on so gosh darn early for
Yeah.
work. No one asked me to log on early. It
Yeah.
was just one of those things that you just
Yeah.
did to run the desk.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I would take 15 minutes to pray and journal. And what I started realizing was that 15 minutes of intentional peace, being still, uh, that started fixing a lifetime of limiting beliefs and carrying weight of an identity that wasn't mine to carry anymore, like that I
Yeah.
am my paycheck or that I am my job title. And I needed every bit of that year and a half to get to the point where I could actually resign.
Yeah. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
what would you say to the woman who is much like us, who is, that high achiever that is always wanting to, get the net, not on the hedonic treadmill, like just really trying to get the next best thing, not materialistic wise, but just success. Um,
Yeah.
how how would you explain to her, like, how to release it, like the mom, the wife, all the things, how to balance it without feeling like you're giving up or you're quitting in the world's eyes? Like, if
Yeah.
she's struggling with
Yeah.
that, what would you tell her?
What a beautiful question, Lorraine. I freaking love you. So beautiful. I like, the first thing that's coming to mind is just this. It's about reconnecting. I just so deeply believe that it's about reconnecting with who you are. Like, I think
Mm,
that we're all given innate gifts. We are all created with a very, like, specific, beautiful, intentional, divinely orchestrated plan. And I
mm,
think that the busyness and life circumstances, like, end up putting a blanket over that light inside of us, and things are
mm,
so noisy, and all of a sudden it gets really dark, and now you're just trying to wake up and try and keep track of what day it is,
mm,
that the light just seems like it's dimming. And I think that that is just a life circumstance thing. I think that is a, what we're consuming thing.
mhm.
But the second that we actually start kind of peeling that back a little bit and giving the light space to shine, the way that
Mhm,
that permeates into everything. I mean, light infects beautifully.
mhm.
And I think the what I saw for myself was, the more I was willing to peel back circumstance, or peel back standards and expectations, the more I realized that I get to decide what kind of mother I show up as, that I get
Yeah,
to decide what kind of wife I show up as, that I get to decide what kind of leader I show up as. And that was so aligned with my soul that it
mm,
made things like having to set boundaries, or it made things like saying no or yes or raising my hand because I actually wanted something. It made
yeah,
all of that so much easier.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I love that. I love that. So that's so encouraging because I feel like women, we try to do it all, be it all, and that just gives us that freedom of it's okay, and to slow
It's
down
okay.
and to listen and to lean into it, right? Instead of
Yeah.
um do be, because that leads to like really that disconnect from the spirit, and then you're not able to hear what God's really trying to speak to us, and being able to slow
Yeah.
down, then you can kind of feel like this is how I need to show up, and this is where I need to show up. Because we feel that when we're so busy, we feel that disconnect. And then all
Oh,
of a sudden,
yeah.
when the weight of it gets so heavy, it's like it's so obvious that we know that what we need to do. And then when we do it, it's like, I felt that. I should have done that.
Yeah, you're like, "I knew that. I knew that."
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
it shows up a lot of times too, like you said, to that, like, it gets us to our breaking point. We're so busy
Mhm.
shoving it down that
Yeah.
finally it gets us to a breaking point, and I would say, like, to the woman who if you have that voice in your head that's like, "Gosh, I just don't know if I need to quit my job just to be able to be a good mom or a good wife," because that is such a common question. It's also like the biggest like caution sign. It's not a you don't have to quit your job just to be able to show up as the mom you want to, but that's part of that like busyness that's piled up, and now you're to your breaking point if you're asking yourself that question. And
Yeah.
there's some other reconnecting work that you might want to do first. That would be my suggestion for what it's worth,
Yeah.
reconnecting back to self before you're just like, here's my resignation and I'll figure out how I'm going to pay bills. Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. Usually, like when that happens, I would say that there's something that can go. Like you don't have to just completely renege on everything and get rid of everything, but there's something or some things that you can release. You
Yeah.
don't need to do, so that you can. We were talking about this, releasing it so that you have space to receive.
Mhm.
And if you're
Yep.
feeling that
It's like
disconnect,
quitting the
yeah,
wrong things, like quitting the things that aren't serving you anymore. If getting your children to 14 different athletic things is putting too much on your plate, okay, well then that's not maybe serving a certain piece of you. So how do you navigate and reposition that? And I don't think that we have to choose like this or that. I absolutely do believe in the power of and I think that if we have the power of and mindset, that actually very naturally creates options for us.
yeah,
It's like, hey, wait, okay, maybe instead of doing 14, our schedule could actually allow for 3. Like I mean,
yeah,
I think that there's ways to navigate that, but I think it's about options, and it starts with yeah, just knowing that that overwhelm, it's a real feeling and it's
mhm,
happening for a reason, and then just
yes,
making sure that you're cutting the right things, that you're quitting the things that are no longer serving you so
yeah,
that you can kind of put yourself back into a position of control again or of power, or maybe even so that you can put yourself into a position of surrender even.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
how do you continue to practice that posture of surrender?
Oh my goodness. Oh, every single day intentionally because I know the benefits of it.
Mhm.
It doesn't necessarily mean that it's easy because I do think that posture of surrender, I absolutely April Foster's beautiful soul, she actually wrote in the book too. One of her keynotes, she describes surrender in this almost like this corkscrew model. It's this corkscrew model upwards though,
Oh,
because it's like every time so you surrender on your knees, which kind of throws you to the right, and then you surrender on your feet, and that throws you to the left. You surrender
yeah,
on your knees, you surrender and it's just kind of like, I constantly, I resonate with that. Like it does kind of feel like I get thrown around a little bit on
yeah,
where am I needed today the most, for whom, myself, the calling, whatever it may be.
mhm,
Um, so I stay aware of it. I constantly journal.
yeah,
And then I'll let you in on a little secret here. It's actually one of the reasons I do my podcast. I do my podcast extremely selfishly. I know that if anybody is going to get in my way, it's going to be me. And so I do the podcast episodes to remind myself that I know these things. I know these things that I should be doing. I know these things that have drastically impacted my own life. And
Yeah.
so, perfect example, it was a couple weeks ago. I was doing my very typical behavior of trying to think my way through something because I'm a natural problem solver. And so, I just need to keep pounding myself through this thought process until I can actually get to a solution.
Yeah.
And in this Jurassic season of surrender, I have been reminded time and time again that I'm no longer operating in a space where you think your way through some of this. The only way through is truly like to be still. And so I listened to my
Mm.
one of my own podcast episodes the other day, and it worked, Lorraine. So I do my podcast super selfishly to remind me to like stay in the
Okay.
zone
Yeah,
and how
yeah.
exactly to surrender.
I love that. Oh, I love that. Because that it is, I mean, it's a posture we have to continuously be in and be willing to be moved through, right? Just like how you were explaining, like the knees, the stand, the knees, the stand.
Yep.
Like, I think surrender and obedience and humility are, they all go hand in hand,
Agreed.
because you have to be humble in order to surrender, and you have to be obedient in order to surrender. And they are all very difficult. They
Yes.
all are so against the flesh, because in the
Oh,
flesh, you don't want to
beautiful.
do any of that,
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah. No. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. Yep. I love how you
Um,
say that. That's beautiful.
Oh man. So what other than the book launch that's coming soon, by the time this releases, by the time this airs, it will have been released. What
Hmm.
next is coming? What are we doing? Are we doing tours? Are we doing keynotes? What are we focusing on?
Oh, yes. Well, wherever I am called to show up is where I will show up. I have learned that that is exactly where this is the season he needs me to just keep showing up. So
Yeah.
I'm going to keep showing up. I do think that that looks like multiple keynotes. I'm already booked for a couple next year. So I'm so excited about that and the way that that's unfolding. I think there's
Yeah.
a solo book probably in the works. So gosh knows,
Yay.
Lorraine, I'm just going to keep showing up.
I love that. You're just going to keep surrendering.
Exactly. Exactly. Whether my head is in the sand or I'm standing, I'm just going to keep surrendering.
Yes. I love it. I love it so much. Brittney, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for this beautiful conversation of what surrender really looks like, and how it's different, and how quitting isn't quitting, right? It's freeing.
Failure.
And sometimes it's
Yeah,
obedience. Quitting is being obedient, and it looks different for
very much
everybody.
so. Very
So
much so. Thank you, Lorraine, for hosting. I so appreciate you. I'm so grateful for the conversation. Thank you so much for this.
thank you. Thank you. Friends, if this episode has touched you in any way, if this is something that you needed to hear, or if someone else needs to hear it, please pass it along. I will have all of Brittney's information in the show notes, and tag Brittney. You can't tag me because I don't have social right now, but share the episode. The more you share, the more people will hear and learn, and we can spread this love and joy everywhere. So, thank you for being here. And remember, you were divinely created for a divine purpose. There was no mistake in you.